this week we're going to be talking about vegetables because Robin Oakley's just been over to the UK, and the obvious question is really how do we compare as far as our acreages and our systems compared to that of the UK? We'll find out more on the program. People are talking about this week, well, Fonterra's thrown out a bit of a lifeline by saying that the profits next year will be a little bit more. Lincoln will be trading out. They've got a bit of a problem at the moment, but they're very sure they'll trade out of that. The pea weevil is still winning as far as cropping farmers are concerned, and that's a major concern. An amazing thing, I saw 2 out of 7 people working on roadworks in Christchurch this morning. Normally the ratio is 1 to 7 working. Lamb prices are high, but the lumbers are very, very low, but the beef numbers are well up, so are swings and roundabouts. And still, we're waiting for Mount Cook Station to find out who is actually going to be able to own it and who's not. The High Court is going to decide that. In just a moment, we're talking about terminal illness and making sure that you're okay if something happens health-wise. If somebody suddenly falls ill and there's a need for very good care, what do we do?
That's interesting. Generally, we need some form of support, and often that's often around family. However, if we don't have family and we don't have financial assistance for that, we have to start looking at asset sales. We have to start thinking about selling our properties or the assets that we have in order to pay for our care. Today's society, it's become more and more relevant because of modern technology and the way medical science has advanced. We're now far easier to be able to not only sort of identify what people have, but also what the prognosis is going to be, what's going to happen. And so, you know, we've all know of people who've heard of instances where people have been diagnosed as terminally ill, and our medical experts tell us, look, this is the condition you've got, and look, this is what's going to happen, and look, you've only got this sort of period of time. When we get into that sort of situation, ultimately we're going to need some sort of care, and that's going to cost. It's not free. People think it's free, but it's not.
Barbara Lee, I guess in many cases a spouse can't actually give up work and do that nursing full time.
That's right, and that's when it gets really difficult for people. So that's when, you know, a good plan would have some funds coming in at those moments. So you've been diagnosed as terminally ill, then...
And it could be brain tumour, it could be cancer, it could be a whole raft of different things.
That's right. I mean, the majority of us, that's what happens. We have some, you know, period of terminal illness, before death. A quick death is, you know, quite low. Statistics about 1 to 5%. So most of us are going to have this period of time. So how do we get funds in there to, you know, allow people to, you know, finish work, and maybe to source some medical needs. They might have a list on their bucket list that they want to do while they're still able to, and yeah, so it just gives people choices.
This isn't covered, Hank, by trauma insurance as I used to know it?
Trauma insurance is covered or is claimable upon specific diagnosis of a set condition. When it reaches a certain level or you're diagnosed with a condition, a lump sum is paid. It has nothing to do with either income or the outcome of your condition. And in fact, trauma is only payable if you survive 14 days. So it has nothing to do with terminal illness. Terminal illness is about where you are diagnosed as terminally ill, and you can get a payment based around your life insurance. So most life insurance policies these days have a terminal illness benefit, where if death is imminent or likely within 12 months, you can claim your life insurance early. You can claim it upon the diagnosis.
So that's the lump sum. We're talking here about triple feed, aren't we? So is there a product now that for example, I'm on my own because all my family's in Australia?
That's right. So some people don't have that need for that life cover. There's no purpose to it. However, you know, we all, if you were diagnosed with a terminal illness, then certainly funds coming in for yourself is something that would benefit you. So there's this new cover called terminal illness, which is about 1/3 of the cost of life cover. So,
and it's standalone?
Yes, yep. So it really does suit a lot of people. Those people that don't have a need for life cover, then there's definitely terminal illness cover available.
I guess we're talking about somebody who doesn't have a mortgage, for example.
No liabilities, no dependents to leave any funds to, no desire to leave any funds to anybody. But, you know, for themselves, if they were put in a situation of being diagnosed, then they've got funds coming through to go and, you know, get their Harley Davidson or go on a holiday or whatever it means to them.
So this is interesting because this, Hank, would normally not be a standalone, but you're always changing in your industry.
Yeah, absolutely, and we need to change in the industry because circumstances change. Once again, I've already said that modern medical science these days allows us to predict a lot better what's going to happen, what the outcomes are. But quite rightly so, as we get older, there's probably a lesser need for life insurance. It's not about what financial assistance the people we leave behind need if we die, because we don't have a mortgage, we don't have dependents, we don't have all the other things that are normally associated with death causing a financial impact on the people we leave behind. The problem we have these days is not the dying, the problem we have these days is the getting there.
It's the living.
It is the living.
It's living because we're propped up, aren't we? I mean, the medical science keeps us alive for a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
And so terminal illness, and it's available right now.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so, as I said, you've got life insurance, but if you're through that page,
There is other products.
it's just looking after people, because you know, in my age group, there's a lot of guys and girls who have literally said, "Well, I've got to have to give up work because I've got to look after my partner."
Yeah. The other aspect is if you don't have that lump sum, then, as I said earlier on, you've got to find that money somewhere. And look, you can get government assistance, but a lot of that's asset tested. So before you actually get that assistance, you've got to sell your assets. So that might be a home that you intend leaving to your children as part of your inheritance. That all of a sudden you've got to dispose of that because you've got to pay.
Peace of mind. Sorry.
Well, the other thing is, you know, like funeral covers, very expensive product. And there's other ways to fund that type of event as well, you know, through a good quality medical policy that gives you access to drugs that Pharmac don't fund, that also have inbuilt funeral benefits. So combination of that and terminal illness, that cover can certainly give some people some certainty around those types of occasions.
Certainty. Thank you very much indeed to you both. In just a moment or two, we're going to be talking about farm accounting. Tax payments?
Yeah, we've got a few farmers that are a bit worried about what tax they've had in the past, and in particular missed payments or the tax they've got to pay in the future. So they're coming to us and sort of saying, well, what do we do about our funding options? You know, obviously the first option would be to have a look at the bank, but it's not necessarily the best now. We find they're taking a tighter line on actually funding tax payments and raising questions about why do you not be able to afford the tax, what have you done wrong, where's the money going? So there's a couple of options around it. The best one is actually use a tax intermediary. So this is someone that you arrange sort of finance with, and then they pay the tax to IRD on your behalf. It doesn't involve the bank, there's no security required, and basically it's just a contract to pay some tax in the future with them.
So how does it work? You give them a whole lot of money and then they pay?
Well, you don't even have to give them a whole lot of money up front. There's a couple of different ways of doing it. So if you've missed payments in the past, you basically say to them, I'm going to buy some tax off you, and they charge you a bit of interest, you pay that plus some tax, and they backdate it to when you missed your payments. So you can get rid of your IRD penalties and interest and things like that. So you're making a bit of a saving there. There is an interest cost, but it's far cheaper than what IRD actually charge.
Yeah.
And you don't have the penalties. So that's a big saving, especially with the way that IRD charge them.
So it's basically borrowing.
Yeah, that's a sort of a form of borrowing there. The other one is basically tax pooling. So you agree with the intermediary that at some point in the future you're going to pay them a lump of tax. They make you pay an upfront interest cost, and then they go and arrange with IRD a payment on your behalf, so they fund it, and it sits in a trust account until you pay them the money, and then it automatically goes into your tax account with IRD as if you paid it on time.
Trust accounts. A lot of people swallow hard when you mention trust accounts.
And normally you would, but this is a very legit set up with IRD. It's managed by an independent trustee. There's nothing that can go wrong. It's been around for years, and we've got a few that have used it and found it very, very successful. So it's perfect for those people, they've got suddenly a provisional tax bill coming up, say, 20, 30,000, no cash to pay it. Instead of having to go to the bank and sort of argue with them and potentially affect future funding and go through all the credit checks, you can just go to this crowd and say, look, we want 20,000 now, and I'm going to pay it when my money comes in, say January,
From
February.
the ball check.
Yeah. So you can time it to actually match when you've got the cash in your account, rather than sort of scrambling to find it when you don't have it.
And it's obviously a bit cheaper than an overdraft.
Oh, far cheaper. Yep, the interest rates are very, very good on it. And it's very easy to arrange. You just give your accountant a call. and say, look, I've got a bit of strife here, can we get some tax financing in place, and they can just do it on your behalf, and it can be done sort of same day even.
Communication, isn't it amazing thing?
Yeah, indeed.
Minimum wages. There's been a bit of a shadow over certain parts of our industry.
Yeah, well, we've had a vineyard now that's come out, and he employed sort of 50 plus migrant workers, tried to pay them a lot less than what they are entitled to. He also falsified timesheets, so he had pre-filled out timesheets that he made them sign to say they worked certain hours, but they'd actually done a lot more. So he was hauled up before the Employment Relations Authority and basically was done by them. He had $9,500 penalty to pay to the Crown. He had to pay his workers, and also had some costs as part of the hearing that he had to cover. He tried to argue that he couldn't pay them what they were worth because they racked up debts for him, but that wasn't the case.
No, and the other thing is that minimum wage is a minimum wage.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it doesn't matter who you are, you're entitled to that, but he thought he could get away with it.
You don't get away with
No,
it.
you don't.
Now, record keeping. I
Yeah.
know that's an old thing as far as you're concerned.
Yeah,
but
it's something
let's
that we
talk about
sort of keep coming back to because we keep getting questions about it. A lot of people think that, come the end of the financial year, they biff out records from 7 years ago and that's it. It's a little bit more involved than that. It's actually what taxable period it relates to. So, if you've got a GST return that was, say, 31 July 2010, you'd only now be getting rid of it. You wouldn't have thrown it out back at the end of June. People think, my balance date is when I get rid of those records. That's not the case. It actually depends on what the period end date was. It's 7 years from then before you can get rid of it.
Yeah, okay, because it's they can call back, can't they? They can pop
Oh,
in and say,
definitely, yeah.
we want to go over that.
Yeah, so they normally go back 4 or 5 years, but they're entitled to go back 7. So if they flag something in the 5th year, 5 years ago, then they could go back the year before and say, what did you do there? So it's important you still have those records there, even if you think they're minor. It could be a GST return that was a couple of $100 refund. You still got to make sure you've got all those records, the bank statements, the receipts, and that sort of thing.
That's actually quite amazing because you'd think that that's gone.
Yeah, but the legislation allows for it. So if IRD do find that you've been untoward and it's been there for a while, they will go back that long way, and we've seen it happen with some major tax cases. So
it comes back, I guess, really to your Triton business because that's the record that is very simple for the IRD to look at.
it is, yeah. So that's a record of your GST in and out, etc. But you still have those paper records behind it. And that's the one that a lot of people forget about. And especially in this world with bank statements, they get them online. If you don't have those bank statements when they come looking, you could be in a bit of strife because that's proof that you paid those bills. So it's, if you change banks part way through a financial year, make sure you've downloaded all your bank statements before you terminate that other bank.
Because I've seen a lot of farmers' offices, and I tell you what, you wouldn't be able to find anything in there.
Yeah, and I've just recently experienced that, or they've got them stored in the wool shed, and so a mouse has got to it and eaten half the records. If they come looking and it's not up to standard, that's your problem, not theirs.
Exactly. Kerry, thank you very much indeed. In just a moment or two, we're going to be talking about vegetables and how we stack up versus the UK farmers.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good. You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
Robin, you've been away for a while. Where did you go? What were you up to?
It's been a few years since I've travelled and focused on being in the paddocks, and I thought it was about time I got back out and had a look and just checked up what everyone else is doing. You can get a bit isolated in your own backyard, so it was quite good. Went over to the UK, went over there with 2 or 3 other guys for the first few days. We went around Lincolnshire and visited a grower there, and then started travelling north towards Scotland and visited another one there, and then went up to the Potatoes in Practice field day just out of Dundee, and that was quite good. There was quite a bit to see there, and quite a few displays and quite a few contacts, and interesting place up there. You knew when you were getting close to Scotland the weather changed.
Yeah, they say that there's 2 seasons in Scotland. There's winter and there's June.
Yes. No, they've certainly got that going on, but goodness me, there's some of the ground they grow potatoes in up there. I can see why there's some of the spud equipment out there that there is.
Robert, how does it compare to us? I mean, you're pretty big acreage.
Oh, on the scheme of things, no, we're quite small acreage really, even by New Zealand standards when you start looking at the process growing side of things over here. But certainly over there, most growers are of a larger size. There's no smaller operators over there, much that I saw. Most are in a big way. It's not uncommon for potato growers over there to be doing 1,000 odd acres, and that's just not sort of 1 or 2. That's a whole lot of people doing that sort of thing. So, and some of them have got more challenges with harvest windows to get things in. So, especially up in the Scotland end of the world. So there's one property I visited there. They're doing 1,300 acres. Yeah, 1,300 acres of potatoes a year. So they've got 3 big self-propelled tracked Grimmy harvesters to get in and get those out. So it's just everything on a bigger scale. A lot of storage over there, a lot more so than here, because they've got a shorter window that they can grow and harvest.
It's mainly for local consumption?
Yes, from what I can make out, it's all pretty much local consumption, whether it be for the process or the fresh market. But just a different scale. You've got 65 million people versus 4 million people, and I think I don't know this, but I'm picking per head of capita, they probably eat a few more spuds than what we do over here. Perhaps they probably wouldn't head off maybe the Southland people, but a lot of potatoes.
Pretty dumb question, but can we learn from them, or can they learn from us?
I think we can learn from each other. We've all got different sets of challenges. They haven't met up with the potato psyllid over there yet, and if they're all going well, they won't. But then most of the growing areas that we're in, they're dealing with the potato cyst nematode, so they've got challenges on that front. And you talk to some growers and you'd believe that they've got a few challenges with the quality seed they're getting as well, which is something that we can experience here as well. And over there they're also looking for new varieties that can get improvements with yield and meet with consumer.
And of course, they are close to Europe, where people were developing such things as agri-air and all those sorts of crops.
Yes. It's interesting over there, the salad potato market's probably a wee bit more developed than what it is here, and from what I could see of it, the yellow flesh potato is probably not quite as popular over there as say what they are in here or the rest of Europe. There's red varieties that are quite popular, and still quite a few white varieties, although we're a bit the same here, you would say, with the Nadines.
Dennis, autumn wheat, where are we at with that?
Well, basically, Rob, the contracting of autumn wheat and farmers trying to make decisions around what they know they can grow and what they should grow, and then organising the seed, and even the merchants growing the seed to be available for next year in the volumes required. It's been a mess forever, and is still a mess. And really, the other industries just wouldn't stand for it, because what happens out there is that farmers think about what they might grow in terms of varieties, and there's very specific ones like purple wheat is one that's into a sort of a niche market type thing. And then they don't know whether they're going to have a contract through their contracting merchant or through the mill until well after the crop is up, which is a totally ridiculous...
Yeah, I mean, it's quite cart and horse, isn't it, really?
It is, and it's been that way for a long, long time, and it needs to change because the cost of carrying seed over for some of these companies is huge if their particular one doesn't have a market, or you know, it's not so bad for spring sown crops because there's time for the market to sort of get the contracts out there and identify the varieties they want. But this year in particular, the purple wheat thing's been an absolute nightmare. There's been growers who have been traditional purple wheat growers, so they go ahead and order the seed and put it in the ground. And then their merchant comes round and once a contract's been released and they don't know whether their contract or their tonnage is going to be accepted, they go and talk to the farmer signs the contract with the merchant.
Yeah.
The merchant then has to submit that contract to the mill, and if the mill's lost a market or there's been a change in trend or something and they only want half the quantity, well, this year they wanted none. Completely.
Charming.
For a start, charming for a start. Then they went back and they said, oh, we'll take 10% of what you grew, which is also charming. and then they went back and said, oh no, we don't want the 10% now, we don't want anything.
So what are you supposed to do?
Well, I know one farmer that put Roundup over 18 hectares of purple wheat. He needed a contract, he needed a signed contract. His bank said, you better get a contract. So he went and got a feed contract, and then the company contracting that feed said, well, we don't want purple wheat and we want to sell you our variety, so get rid of it. So he put Roundup over 18 hectares. 2 days later, they came back. 2 days later, they came back and said, we'll take all that purple wheat now. We've found another market. Now, that is just rubbish. It's a cost to the industry that's unacceptable. It needs to be sorted out. There'll be no other industry out there would accept that type of thing. And
well, Dennis, people are just going to stop putting it in the ground, aren't they? Just going to say, no, you're not going to.
Well,
do
they
that to
are.
me.
Yeah, it's anti-production. It's not really encouraging the wheat industry. It's discouraging it. And really, these companies need to get their acts together, and they have to talk to their customers and have a closer relationship so that when it comes out, even the merchants, if they say, well, okay, here's 10 merchants, you know, you each got 1,000 tonne each or something like that. Give some sort of allocation out there so the merchant can talk to the farmer with some assurity. But before the stuff is put in the ground, yeah, that's the thing. And it's been this way for years. And quite frankly, I don't know why farmers put up with it, because it's
they're going to stop putting up with it.
Well, it's rubbish. It's rubbish.
Yeah.
And the prices are quite low at the moment. It's a great excuse to exit the wheat industry.
Poof. Spring. Let's go positive.
Let's go positive. Right, absolutely. Well, spring is here, and any farmer who walks out on a spring day and hears the bees and smells the flowers and doesn't get enthused about the new season, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And as a farmer said to me, once you cultivate your land or plough it, it becomes brand new. And it's one of the few things that you can make brand new every year. And that's part of the excitement and the challenge, that it's you and your skills and your knowledge and your equipment up against nature. Nature's trying to knock you down and cause problems and make it hard, and it's your skills and your vigilance and your support against nature. And everyone should go out there in every paddock they cultivate and say, well, this is going to be the best crop I've ever grown, and the way the prices are at the moment, they have to be the best crop.
Yeah, they do. Now,
Yeah.
Speaking of nature fighting back, you're getting things like resistance in ryegrass.
Yes, Rob, and that's something that's probably been brought into the country, particularly from Australia. The ryegrass, herbicide-resistant ryegrass is coming in from Australia, but it also can be created by farmers using chemical regimes and not alternating chemicals. We all know about worm resistance in sheep and so forth, and alternating anthelmintics, but farmers need to adopt that attitude in their herbicide regimes with grass weeds, and be particularly vigilant where they've used a herbicide that used to control that particular grass species on their farm and now it doesn't. So identify those grasses that have escaped the net.
Well, how many options have you got?
Well, they're getting pretty thin. They're getting very thin, and some of them could be to cultivate before that grass seeds. And indeed, some resistant grasses can actually spread their pollen onto other ones too. So that's the other threat that's out there.
Kenneth, thank you very much indeed. Just a moment or two, we're going to be talking about FAR, because they've come up with a special computer system which is going to keep track of your silos and what's been put in them. Production-wise, there's a computer system that's been developed by FAR. It's ideal for tracking what's happening as far as your silos are concerned in grain storage.
Yes, we have. It's got a grain store section in it, which is basically a grain inventory. When a farmer sets up his paddocks, he can set up his silos. So however many silos he has on the farm and how many tons that they hold, he can set them up. And then the two systems, the paddock diary and the grain store, link when he harvests from his paddock diary. The grain moves to the store waiting to have something done to it.
Once again, this is important for compliance.
It's really inventory, because farmers will need to know where their store is. They have to number their silos, that's part of compliance as well. And they have to know, obviously, which crop has gone into which silo. And records are related to what they do with that grain in the silo. So when they clean the silo out at the beginning of the season, they can record it and report it. And when they check the grain during the season, the moisture of it, if it's got pests in it, have they treated it? Again, this is all part of the reporting that goes on to that vendor declaration with the crop recording diary that goes to the end user. So the grain store is crucial for traceability, and they can also set up their contracts and sales through it. So it's a little complex system on its own, but also it links to the diary side.
Is it really important to know what paddock the grain came from and what happened to it?
For traceability, yes, yeah. And if they've got a problem, if you had a problem with, a weed like velvet leaf has been all in the air recently, you'd need to know which paddock that came from so that you can check it for next year in case it comes again.
So you can have a look at your silo and say, in that particular silo, certain sprays were used and certain fertiliser was used.
Yes, yeah. The vendor declaration form that pulls together both the grain store information, what's happened with it in the store, it brings in what's happened when it's been growing. So it all comes together on one report with no money, doesn't bring the gross margin dollars onto this. It links automatically the active ingredients. So the end user knows that for the food chain and for the Northern Hemisphere seeds, what's actually happened when they've grown that crop.
When the grain leaves the farm, what, you just give somebody a printed off report?
Yep, easily, and print it off and pass it to the person who's buying your grain or seed.
And once again, it all just totally ties in with the compliance reports, apps on cell phones and farm computers.
Yes, it's simple. What we're trying to do is a simple system that farmers can just do it on the go and they tick all the boxes with it.
So traceability and accountability, very, very important as far as your organisation is concerned. Just a moment or two, we're going to be talking to Jim Grierson about horticultural type things.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, That's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
Jim, it's spring, and I say that as a question.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think we're there, Rob. Look, I'm sure there'll be some dirty days between now and October, but in all intents and purposes, yesterday was a wonderful day, 18 degrees. Soil temperature started to move up, but things are actually moving out on the crops. Green tips happening in apples and happening in the things that should be happening in raspberries and that sort of thing. So, and vegetables are starting to move that were planted earlier in the winter. They set their roots and now they're on the move. So things are definitely warming up.
However,
we could still have a series of frosts, although the snow's running away pretty quickly. But look, it's a funny old spring. I was just talking to my colleagues in Europe during the last 10 days on email, and they have had a most frustrating harvest of various crops. And it started way back in the spring when the weather was so indifferent. And look, we're experiencing the same thing, so we could be in for a fun time over the next 4 or 5 months.
So what do we do now? Because as you said, the frosts could be very, very real.
Yeah. Right at the moment, we're starting to see in all crops, whether they be vegetable crops, whether they be fruit crops, young, new growing tissue, very sensitive to frost, very sensitive to weather change. Now, if we get a screaming nor'wester day, they'll get burned. If we get a frost, they'll get burned. So there's a lot of things we can do to minimise that, I dare say, that reaction of the tissue to those changing events. And one of the main things is that to apply copper to actually remove the bacteria in the water and in the moisture of the plant, which will minimise frost damage. So that's one thing. But what that copper also does, it protects the plant's tissue with a cover of fungicide that actually does help not only just to remove the bacteria, but also just helps the
so there's a wee touch of oil, as it were.
Yeah. There's a layer, there's a halo over that young tissue, which does help with copper. But there are a number of other things, especially when you've got trees and bushes and those types of crops, where you must minimise the amount of grass or trash that's down underneath them and also in between the rows. If you do that, frost attaches to long grass or attaches to foliage. Therefore, temperatures come down, and when they start to rise, the frost comes up and still damages the crop. So growers should be mowing or spraying out or cultivating those areas and keeping them nice and clean and bare as ground as they possibly can. Even by putting a couple of litres of Roundup over down a grass strip, in 6 weeks' time, that's got grass back in it. It's just got a temporary sort of a temporary control, and that grass obviously dies down into a mulch and less frost damage, less potential for frost damage. But if we get a -5 degrees for 5 hours, you can't do anything against that sort of thing. So when we're talking about prevention, Rob, we're talking about frost that are maybe 1.5 degrees and last for a few hours, or that sharp -3 degrees, but from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning. They very rarely do any damage at all. It's that one that starts at 9 o'clock in the evening and goes through to 7 o'clock in the morning. And it doesn't matter what its temperature is, it'll do damage.
Exactly. And as far as the soil moisture concerned, I mean,
moisture has been. I mean, the rain we've just had recently was absolutely excellent, and it all went in. You know, because there was some previous moisture there. So where I've been talking about the last month or so, the top 2 or 3 centimetres being very dry, with the frequent small 10 fill 5 mil rain events we have had, that's moistened that, softened that cap as it were, and now we've got some nice moisture going into the ground. Over the last weekend we had across Canterbury and in the North Island, east coast of the North Island, 10 to 15 millimetres of rain, which is actually quite magic at this time of the year. So what does that do? If frost follow that, the ground temperature will stay cold, but if it continues to be quite mild and warm, those ground temperatures will start to move, and they must be moving because the young root hairs are growing. That's what's making things shoot at this stage. So there's a slow evolution into the springtime now, not as a rushed one I thought might have happened.
Have we caught up again? Because at one stage
we're not. No, we're probably still 10 days. That's probably an exaggeration. Probably a good week still behind. There's no doubt about that. We could still catch that up. But I would say...
Invariably we do, don't we?
Yeah, invariably we do, but I think we're still in for a wet, cold type of maybe October, November period. I'm hoping I'm absolutely wrong, and I'd love to be proven wrong, but it's just got that feel about it. And, you know, there's not a lot of snow in the refrigerator up there, so we're not going to have big thaws. And guys have been dry, and they've been irrigating. So it's one of those years that tells me that things are going to be pretty tight going forward in terms of moisture in the ground, but when we do get it, we're going to get it at the wrong time, and that's rather frustrating, really, Rob.
Actually, it's quite interesting because a mate of mine, Arthur Blakely, has always said that on the 26th of August we'll always get rain.
Yes.
And we did.
Yes, that'd be right, yeah.
Isn't it funny? Because you go into all those sort of statistics and things. And
well, a gentleman who's long passed, he said to me, he's a very good grower, he said to me one time about 15 years ago, he said, Jim, if we haven't had 6 snows on the Port Hills, we haven't had the finish of winter. And, you know, I watched that for 11 years, he was absolutely right. And I haven't counted the snow this year.
No, so we should have perhaps. Thanks very much indeed, Jim. In just a moment or two, we're going to be talking to Karen about how you can avoid stress and treat yourself. Karen, our own happiness. Apparently, according to your book, it's all in our own hands.
Well, it is. You know, research has found that only 10% of our happiness has anything to do with our life circumstances. So that means that we've got control over 90% of it, if we know how. But the thing is, Rob, a lot of people don't know how. Because the happiness is actually a learned skill. And if your parents didn't know how to be happy, how could they possibly teach you?
It's an interesting angle, because I guess we do learn from our surroundings.
We do. I mean, how to be happy is a skill I didn't even learn till my 30s. So I was a bit late in life, really, because my parents didn't know how. And luckily, as you know, I'm in the business of helping people to be happier, healthier and more successful. And so a lot of the things that I've learned over the years, because there's no magic wand, you know, there's no one thing that'll make you happy, unfortunately. But there are a lot of different things that if you do or don't do, you'll be happier. It's the same with success. So many books have been written about success. You know, there are certain things that successful people do. And the idea is you emulate them and you too will be successful. Same with happiness. There are certain things happy people do and don't do.
And it goes the same thing for health and well-being?
Absolutely. You know, there's a common denominator between your happiness, your health and your success. And the common denominator is your thoughts, your beliefs and your emotions. If you change those, you can change everything.
Now, I want to get into a bit, because a lot of people will think this is sort of smoke and mirror stuff. And if you told me, for example, that I could get over my vertigo, you would laugh at me, wouldn't you? You just did.
Yes, well, I'm in the know on that one.
Because, I mean, you did actually get rid of my vertigo.
In 1 hour?
It was an hour.
Yes. And you'd had it for how many years?
67.
Right. And the reason that I could be so successful with what I'm doing is a form of energy psychology I use called EFT. It stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And energy psychology, just so you know listeners understand, is a term given to anything that uses both psychology, we all know what that is, and energy medicine in the same treatment, like working with the body's electrical energy system. And because just talking about something doesn't change it. But when we actually use a therapy that will actually change things down at the subconscious level, then we can really get changes.
Because For 67 years, I had been telling myself that I shouldn't be standing on tiptoes.
And did that work?
Well, it did actually. It meant that I wouldn't climb onto a chair and change a light bulb.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's an absolute fear, but that's one-way traffic going into my head.
And people just saying, well, get over it. That didn't work, right? Whereas this form of energy psychology I use, known as EFT, really works to change those subconscious programming, because you're afraid of something and like it's the body's alarm systems going off and going, danger, danger, when really there's no danger. So we've got to find a way of turning that alarm signal off.
And I had to be able to be ready for that?
Yes, I have one rule with my clients. I will not accept someone who's been sent. You know, if you send a child or a partner and go, I need you to go and see Karen, I'm not interested, because you have to have the buy-in to want to work on yourself. Working on yourself is actually the hardest job of all, and you've got to be ready.
Yeah. In your book, you're actually talking all the way through about happiness, and you're saying that happy people can say no, for example.
That's something that is a skill, a part of the skill that we learn to be happy. A lot of people, I find, in fact, I'd say probably about 80% of my clients have two personality traits: inability to say no and inability to put themselves first. The nicest people have the biggest problems because they're not living their own lives. So learning to say no is a vital element of happiness.
So we as New Zealanders do not normally lift our heads up because of tall poppy.
Yeah, we think that we've got to play small. And, you know, happy people, they don't have to squash themselves down and play small. They're happy to be who they are regardless of what others might think. And that's a big deal. You know, most of us have belief systems that we have to please someone else or not rock the boat. And so I help people to change their belief system so they can be truly themselves, because it's only when we're truly ourselves that we can be truly happy.
But you're fighting that instinct of New Zealanders to say, oh no, he's full of himself, he's whatever he might be, because he's holding himself erect.
Our whole culture is around pulling people down. It needs to change.
Where do we get a book?
My website, setfree.co.nz. I'll post one out to you. And the ebook is available on Amazon and also my website. And within the next couple of months, the hard copy will be on Amazon for those overseas. But right now, off my website.
Because it's a very good read. I mean, it basically turned me around.
I'm so pleased. Thank you for sharing that.
No, seriously, it really is. So you're based in Christchurch?
Yes, I am. And but I see people all over the world via Skype. So distance is no barrier. It's amazing the places that I work with people from.
Thank you very much indeed. In just a moment or two, we're going to be talking to Nathan Guy, and his subject is going to be biosecurity, which he's got some very good news about.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure. Manufactured from healthy deep-sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
Minister, biosecurity is always a major. What's happening in that area?
Yes, we've got a big work program there, Rob. You'll be aware in this year's budget it was the highest ever, $223 million invested into the biosecurity system. It follows on a significant investment from last year's budget as well, which has allowed us to put another 90 new frontline staff, 24 dog detector teams. That's on top of the existing numbers that we have, which pushes it up around 60 now, and we're also rolling out another half a dozen modern X-ray machines. We've also brought in the border clearance levy. What used to happen in the past when people were coming across our borders used to be taxpayer funded. Now it's user pays, and of course as we see an increase in volume, like we've seen record tourist numbers come in, it just means that those that are actually utilising our border services are paying for it. So that's where we think the cost should lie. The important point, Rob, is that instead of me having to go back through the cabinet budget process, as we see an increased demand at our borders, and it looks like we're going to continue to see that for some time, it just means that we will be able to provide the necessary services to keep our borders as strong as possible.
Because those numbers, as you say, are likely to increase quite a bit, Minister.
Yes, they are. We're seeing huge numbers of transport operators, particularly airlines that are choosing to come to New Zealand now. We're seeing big growth out of China, North America and Europe as well. New Zealand is very much seen as an attractive destination. And that means obviously we've got a few challenges internally. We've got a few challenges that we need to be very mindful on the border. That's why just recently I released Biosecurity 2025. It's a refresh on the strategy that we had right back from 2003. The fundamentals of it are that it gives all New Zealanders the opportunity to have their say on this process. Ultimately, I'd like to see a biosecurity team of 4.7 million people. It's a focus also on the toolbox for tomorrow, particularly with science and technology, looking at what other countries are doing to grapple with some of the biosecurity challenges that we face. Having free-flowing information highways, real-time data, there's an opportunity for us to do more and to get that information out to passengers and others that are choosing to come to New Zealand. And of course, making sure that we have the effective and strong leadership and governance, and also making sure we're attracting the brightest and the youngest people into the biosecurity system, because it is hugely important for us as a trading nation that we have a real focus on it.
Minister, skills on farms, are we lacking there a bit?
Yeah, look, it's something I'm hearing a lot when I'm out and about in the community, people saying to me it's getting hard to find people who want to come out and live in the country areas and take on some of the jobs, which I find incredible. You know, it's such an amazing set of communities to live in, and the country life is so rewarding and supportive. But I hear it a lot from employers, and so it's something we are focused greatly on. You know, 1 in 6 jobs in New Zealand is in the primary sector, and it's 10% of our GDP, and actually we can see it growing by another 50,000 jobs over the next 10 to 15 years. So it's a boom area. It's an area I think we need to be discussing with our young people in schools, and we're certainly running all sorts of programs in schools and in university to get them to think about careers on farm and careers in the rural community. But it's also not just on farm, of course. It's rural doctors, rural vets, rural midwives, and the program we've been running to get people doing voluntary bonding. So we say, look, you commit to going and working in rural New Zealand and in hard to staff areas, and we'll help write off your student loan. That's been incredibly successful. We've paid off about...
Write off your student
loan?
Well,
in parts. We help them reduce it. So over the last 5 years we've been running it, we've put $23 million into that, and the program's been so successful we're now having to restrict the numbers applying. So it's been great, and what we find is you get these young doctors and nurses and vets into rural New Zealand. They spend a few years there, they find a local lass or a local bloke and fall in love and get married, and then they want to stay there there and make their lives there. So I think there's a lot they get out of it. It's as much as anything, I think, just making people aware of the opportunities in rural New Zealand, because actually, as we know, it's an incredibly strong part of our economy, and it needs the people to make it sing. So, you know, there's a lot of good work going on, but it's important that New Zealanders think about the opportunities out in the regions and on farms and in rural New Zealand, because, you know, they're considerable.
You're relying on people like Lincoln University and schools.
Yeah, well, look, I think all the way through from primary school, and there's some neat stuff that we're sort of seeing in the primary schools and the high schools to get people excited and thinking about rural careers, but also, as you say, right through the universities. And I know, you know, Lincoln University's been in the news a bit recently with having a few struggles, but it's such an incredibly important part of New Zealand, I think, training the next generation of agricultural scientists and planners and water managers and hydrologists. That is one of the strengths of New Zealand. You know, we're known for our skills in agriculture and horticulture and viticulture, and we have to continue to be really training that next crop of people for the future. So right across the board, from the highly qualified rural specialists to the farm workers, to the tractor salesmen and mechanics, as I say, right through to the supporting rural teachers, rural midwives, rural doctors. There's a lot to offer out there, but we just have to work on joining those dots.
Internet security, that's a big one, especially for rural people, perhaps.
Yeah, look, I think it is. So last few times I've been in your show, Rob, I've talked a lot about, you know, the Rural Broadband Initiative and getting more connectivity out to more Kiwis, and it's incredibly exciting to see them taking those opportunities, seeing how they can grow businesses from home and connect their operations with internet monitoring and Internet of Things, and the opportunities are amazing. But it's a bit like any new technology, there are always risks we have to think about and adapt to. So for me, it's like cars. You know, when we first got into cars, we didn't kind of turn away from them because of the risks. We just learnt to wear our seatbelts, and putting our seatbelt on, making sure we had our brakes right and our tyre pressure right, just became standard. The internet's a bit the same. So the opportunities are vast, but there are some simple things we do have to do, because the reality is there is a vast network of people all around the world who are looking to hack into computer systems, to steal information, to access, you know, your identity. Actually, the global cyber crime industry is now bigger than the global drugs trade. That's how significant it is. So people are starting to really understand that every single enterprise, every connection, every business, at some stage is likely to be someone's going to try and have a go at it. Now, I don't think people need to freak out. There are some really simple things that will protect you against the vast majority of the threats. First one is just have a password. You know, have your devices locked, have a password that's reasonably secure, secure your Wi-Fi, make sure you don't click on links in emails, install the updates on your software that comes through. You know, they're pretty simple things. They don't take a lot of time, but perhaps it's too easy to get into the habit of not doing it. Oh, I can't be bothered unlocking my phone, I can't be bothered locking my Wi-Fi. It's worth doing.
I think a lot of people would say, you know, I'm an individual. The hackers are going to go into IRD or some government department, but you can lose money, can't you?
Absolutely. Look, they go everywhere. The Australian government just came out yesterday saying that, you know, the number of times that they've been hacked and information stolen. I know, you know, banks, health records, but right down to individuals. Not only, as you say, can they access financial information and steal money, there's a thriving trade into stealing online identities. So it's, as I say, it's not something that we should.
Why would you want to do that?
Well, they can use your identity then to access all sorts of other benefits and arrangements, and use that as entry into other areas. So there's quite a complex and sophisticated industry behind all of this. And as I say, I don't want people to be scared and therefore not go online and experience all the benefits that come with it. But there are just a few simple things, and I think that kind of Kiwi, she'll be right, oh, no one's looking at me, is just probably one of those bubbles we need to burst. Look, there are people who are interested in getting into information of all sorts, and it only takes a few simple things to keep yourself safe. And there's one other point that's probably worth mentioning, which is just around young people online. So, you know, most of us know our kids are far more into the online world than we are, and far more at home on it. But the truth is that there are threats that exist for young people online that, you know, none of us were probably used to when we were young. And cybersecurity, cyberbullying, it's a real thing, and we do have to think about what our kids are exposed to online, how to keep them safe. There's a great organisation called NetSafe who are working with New Zealanders with the Harmful Digital Communications Act to make sure that there's a path and a place for people to go if they are suffering online harm. So again, the message, I guess, is don't be put off the internet, don't be scared of it, but just make yourself aware of the new world and some of the things to look out for.
Thanks very much indeed. Now, if you'd like to recap on what the Minister was saying, of course, you can go to our website, which is ontheland.co.nz. I'm Rob Cope Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed the program, but I will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.